The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good morning and welcome to Redefining Airmanship, Session 6 of 6. Glad you could join us this morning. In this session, we're going to talk about your personal airmanship development plan, and then we're going to talk about where do we go from here now that we're at the last webinar in the series. This is a Wings Proficiency program, so you get a credit, and we're going to look at the end of this webinar, the question we've been looking at all the way through the series: if I don't fly right, should I fly at all? Let's start out by looking at how we're going to put together your personal airmanship development plan. First of all, let's address the question, why do you need a personal airmanship development plan? And the answer is to make you a better, safer airman, to keep an interesting, exciting aeronautical challenge continuously in your sights, and to get more out of your flying. Those are the three main reasons, in my mind at any rate, of why you should have a personal airmanship development plan. What we'll do is look at the 7-step process that I use in developing personal airmanship development plans. There are other ways to do this, but this is a nice logical process, and it's the same basic process that is used in all training program development. First step is to assess your current airmanship level. And then in step 2, you state your airmanship goals. Step 3, you define your training requirements to reach those goals. Then you define and locate the resources. Then in step 5, you state specific objectives. In step 6, you plan instruction and training. And in step 7, you conduct the training. And then after that training is conducted, you start back around the circle by assessing your then current airmanship level and setting your next goals. Pretty straightforward process. We'll look at each one of those steps in a lot more detail. Here are the tools you're going to need for this airmanship development plan. You're going to need a planning calendar. Success in any endeavor requires planning, as we all know as pilots. The daily planning calendar is used to track both flight and ground activities. The purpose of this step is to add structure to your program. You need structure, and this also helps you with discipline. The calendar should also be used to track flight activities in conjunction with your logbook. You'll need a journal, and I know this sounds a little bit, guys, like writing in a diary, but that's approximately what it is. However, you'll see here as we talk about how we're going to implement this plan, how that will work for you. The journal is really for reflections on various airmanship topics of interest. So as you come across an airmanship topic or you think of one, jot it down in your journal so that you can do more research on it, talk to your mentor pilot, flight instructor about it. And the journal is also good for writing down questions as they pop into your mind so that you can later get your airmanship questions answered. The journal should be something small enough to bring with you when you fly. It should fit in your flight bag. When you reach your airmanship goals, your journal will help you to look back and refine your continuing improvement program. So it's a tool you'll be using throughout your airmanship development program. The journal is a companion to your logbook and study materials. And of course your logbook, we're all familiar with that, but that completes the list of tools that you'll need for accurate and reflective learning. The standard entries should be made and cross-referenced to the journal. This allows you to complete the picture of what occurred on any given flight. And these are the basic tools that Kern recommends, but I'm going to show you some additional tools later on that you can augment these 3 basic tools with. Now here's how Kern suggests you use these tools. Use your calendar for preparatory actions. Use your logbook for the specifics of a flight. And review your journal for lessons learned and questions regarding the flight. So again, pretty basic, straightforward. Now we're going to need study materials, and you and your probably CFI mentor pilot who's helping you with this are going to specify the training materials that you're going to need to accomplish the objectives that you're going to state in your plan. And these materials will more likely be a combination of print media, online training programs, seminars, CD, DVDs, and other training aids. And of course you can source these at FAAsafety.gov, AOPA Online, Sporties, King, Amazon, others. There's plenty of sources out here. Just takes a quick Google search and you can pretty much find any training materials you need online. Now, before you begin, realize that you will reap what you sow. Your returns will be directly related to how much effort you put in. Now, there are 3 key points to keep in mind. Set moderate goals. Don't, let's say you're at the private pilot level now and you say, okay, my next goal is an instrument rating. As we all know and we've discussed before, that's a big leap from private pilot to instrument rating. So that's probably a goal too far, if you will, for an effective airmanship development plan. Set moderate goals, something you can easily reach. And so if your ultimate goal is an instrument rating, it might be, okay, the first goal I'm going to do towards that is I'm going to take a course on surviving a VMC into IMC encounter, which will require some instrument training, some knowledge of air traffic control procedures, and so forth. So that could be a moderate goal on the way to that instrument rating. Use existing instruction and evaluation tools whenever possible. In other words, don't reinvent the wheel. Take whatever you can off the shelf. And I believe that in most cases, everything that you would need in any particular plan you would lay out are pretty much available off the shelf. Personalize your plan. Remember, Kern said that there's no cookie cutter approach to airmanship development. This is it's going to be different for each one of us. So even though the process can be the same for each one of us, the individual elements of the plan will be different. Personalize it. Let's use a case study, if you will, to show how we would develop a personal airmanship development plan. And let's call our pilot, in this case, Joe Pilot. Joe's profile, he's 49 years old. He has a private pilot certificate. He obtained that about 10 years ago. He has no additional ratings. His total flight time is about 250 hours over those 10 years, about 125 cross-country, 15 night, and 5 hood, which in my experience is pretty typical of a private pilot out there flying today. Flight time in the last 12 months, 20 hours. Aircraft types flown, he started out in a 152, he upgraded to a 172, and now he's flying a 182, but none of them had glass, the old steam gauge airplanes. All right, let's take a little closer look at that airmanship development plan process. Again, it's a 7-step process. We'll look at each one of these steps now in detail. Step 1 is assess the current airmanship level, your current airmanship level. Now this is what we're recommending for Joe. Complete the 6-hour Redefining Airmanship webinar or the seminar series. If you're going to pursue airmanship, I think you would agree you have to have a pretty good understanding of what it's all about. And I hope that this webinar and seminar series has provided you with that information. But again, I'll reiterate, it's just the tip of the iceberg. You really should read the book. And then complete the Airmanship Assessment Questionnaire available at the Center for Airmanship Excellence. This is just a structured way to evaluate your current airmanship level. Then review the Airmanship Assessment Questionnaire with a mentor pilot or senior CFI. I use the term mentor pilot in a specific way here. These are mentor experienced pilots who are mentors for people in what we see as an ACE, Airmanship Development Support Organization. We chatted about that, I believe it was session 5. And throughout this presentation I'm just going to use mentor pilot. But it could be a senior CFI that you would use to help you with this, but I would emphasize senior. A brand new CFI with very little flying time is not really going to be steeped in the ways of airmanship to the extent that he or she can be really helpful to you in developing an airmanship development plan. So in my estimation, you're going to need a senior CFI to help you with this. Number 4, conduct an airmanship assessment flight with the mentor pilot. So the airmanship assessment questionnaire is going to look at a lot of things like where you learn to fly, how much you're flying, how you personally rate yourself on the Kern airmanship model, the elements of the model. But the mentor pilot really can't get a good fix on where you're at now, what your airmanship level is, unless he or she flies with you. So you have to conduct an airmanship assessment flight. Then discuss with the mentor pilot the results of the airmanship assessment questionnaire review. In other words, you reviewed it with them. Now you're going to talk about the results of that review. And the airmanship assessment flight, because now that mentor pilot has a real good picture of your current level of airmanship, and you and the mentor pilot can have a productive discussion about and then agree on your current airmanship level. Now here's the results of this assessment. Number 1, on the Center for Airmanship Excellence Airmanship Assessment Questionnaire, Joe scored himself at approximately the mid-level on all of the elements of the Kern airmanship model. So he thought he was pretty good at discipline, but he wasn't great. His skills were pretty good, but kind of rusty. His proficiency was not that great because he wasn't all that current and his skills were rusty. And then in the 5 pillars of knowledge, his knowledge of self, aircraft, team, environment, and risk were, about halfway up those pillars. He thought he was doing okay for his level of experience. And his situational awareness, he rated himself as about the midpoint on the scale. He felt that he had pretty good situational awareness. And his judgment, so far he hadn't made any huge mistakes, so he thought his judgment was pretty good. So that's how Joe rated himself on the assessment questionnaire. Still in assessing Joe's airmanship level, his results number 2. During the meeting with the mentor pilot, the CFI mentor pilot determined that Joe was probably overestimating his levels of airmanship in most of the Kern airmanship model elements. And as you recall, Kern pointed out that there have been many studies done that show that we are very poor as individual pilots. We're very poor at assessing our levels of airmanship. So the mentor pilot knows this, and he relayed to Joe that, well, thank you for your honest assessment of where you're at right now, but we know that you're probably overestimating where you're at. The mentor pilot also determined that Joe had not received comprehensive initial training. He learned to fly at FBO flight school 10 years ago in an old airplane. His flight instructor was a brand new guy, and he took him 70 some hours to get his private certificate, and so that really wasn't, in the mentor pilot's estimation, comprehensive initial training. Also determined that Joe had not completed any meaningful recurrent training over the past 10 years. Like most of us, all Joe had done was to take a flight review every 2 years, and that was his recurrent training. So that wasn't really comprehensive recurrent training. And the mentor pilot determined that Joe had flown approximately 4 hours a month for a few years after obtaining his private certificate, but he had flown less than 4 hours per month in recent years, so his activity level had fallen off pretty good. And also, the mentor pilot determined that Joe had not been pursuing airmanship excellence for the last 10 years, but now he has seen the light and he's committed to it. Still looking at some of Joe's results here. Number 3, during the flight with the mentor pilot, it was determined that Joe was very rusty in all of the Kern airmanship model elements, but that he was an enthusiastic pilot who was determined to improve his airmanship. So it really doesn't make any difference what your level is now. That's what this assessment is all about, because we're going to come up with a plan now to improve airmanship. So the biggest factor that the mentor pilot was looking for in all of this assessment was Joe's attitude. Is Joe enthusiastic about flying? Does he really want to improve his airmanship level? And if those are a go, then Joe can raise his airmanship level through an airmanship development program. All right, now we're moving on to step number 2, and that is state airmanship development goals. And there's some tasks here. Number one, meet with a mentor pilot to determine realistic airmanship development goals. Remember, Kern's recommendation is modest goals. 2, identify airmanship development goals relative to what kind of flying Joe wants to do. I mean, it's obviously if Joe just wants to fly around the patch on sunny days, he has to have one level of airmanship. If he wants to go out and fly hard IFR down to 200.5 any day of the week in day or night, then he has to obviously have a much different level of airmanship to be able to do that safely. So you have to take that into account when you're setting these airmanship development goals. What kind of flying do you want to do? Then, of course, we're going to crank into the equation here Joe's current airmanship level, which we assessed in step 1. And then we're going to look at the resources Joe is willing to devote to reach his airmanship development goals. If Joe says, well, I can come out and fly with you once a month, and I've got 2 hours a week to do all of the other things I should be doing, well, I don't know. He's going to have a tough time reaching all but the most modest airmanship goals if those are the only resources he's going to devote. So, but the amount of resources is an important factor here in determining the goals. And still in step 2, looking at Joe's results, Joe determined that, excuse me one second. Sorry about that. Forgot to mute that phone. Just took care of it. Sorry for the interruption. So we're in state the airmanship development goals, step 2, Joe's results. Joe determined that he wants to reach the following airmanship development goals. 1, he wants to establish and maintain a high level of flight discipline. Joe has become convinced that that's the bedrock of all the bedrock principles, that he's got to get better at his overall flight discipline. So he's going to work on that. He wants to get a high level of discipline. Number 2, he wants to bring his skill levels back to those required for a private pilot certificate. Number 3, he wants to be proficient in all of the private pilot practical test standard areas of operation. As you recall, practical test standards for each certificate and rating have areas of operation, and then there are certain tasks within those areas. So he wants to be proficient in all those areas. So note that he's now addressed the 3 bedrock principles. Going to maintain a high level of flight discipline, he's going to work on his skills, and he's going to become proficient. Number 4, Joe is going to regain and maintain a level of knowledge in all of the 5 pillars of knowledge that are at least at the levels required to obtain a private pilot certificate. So now we're looking at the 5 pillars in the model, in the Kern airmanship model, and Joe's addressed that as goals. He has clear goals because he can go to the requirements for private pilot, the knowledge requirements, and he knows exactly what he has to have. Number 5, Joe's going to learn and be proficient in situational awareness, procedures, and techniques. Remember, when we looked at those, I believe it was session 5, we saw that there are ways to learn better situational awareness techniques and procedures. So he's going to do that. And his 6th goal is to learn and be proficient in aeronautical judgment procedures and techniques. And again, we know we can learn that. So now Joe is covered. This is how we would use the Kern airmanship model as a framework to help us develop this airmanship development plan. So we've covered all the bases in the Kern airmanship model. And then finally, Joe wants to reach a level of airmanship that will allow him to be confident in flying day and night VFR on trips of up to 500 miles from home base. But he's not going to do that all alone. He's determined he's going to do that only with the support of an airmanship development support organization. So he would have a safety management system, a safety culture wrapped around him. He'd have a dispatch operation to provide in-flight support, that sort of thing. So if he wanted to reach a level where he could feel very comfortable flying day and night VFR on trips up to 500 miles without that support, then he'd have to polish up his skills in other areas like flight planning. He'd have to come up with some strategies for his operations to make them a little safer, a little closer to a safety management system. So, but he's decided he is going to fly within an ADSO. So that's the goal he's set here, the standard he's set to reach this goal. So he's got all of his bases covered here in this stating his airmanship development goals. And the last thing he wants to do is complete a comprehensive upgrade training in a modern aircraft with a glass cockpit. So obviously he could reach the goals 1 through 7 without flying a modern airplane with a glass cockpit, but Joe has decided he wants to make that upgrade. He wants to start flying modern aircraft with all the safety devices, including glass cockpits. So that's the goals that Joe has set for himself here, along with the assistance of his mentor pilot. So number 3, step 3, define training requirements. Here are the requirements that Joe and his mentor pilot have determined that they're going to have to meet to reach those goals. Joe's going to have to review his private pilot ground school course. He went through it 10 years ago or more, and to get up to that knowledge he needs and the 5 pillars of knowledge, he's going to have to go back through that private pilot ground school course. They both determined that's the approach to take. He's going to read the FAA's Pilot Handbook on Aeronautical Knowledge, He's going to read Stick and Rudder, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about all of these training aids here in a second. And he's going to read Redefining Airmanship, the book. He's going to complete 6 online AOPA and FAA mini courses. And he's going to complete 22 flight training sessions with a mentor pilot. Now that may sound like a lot, but I can tell you from my personal experience, I have helped many people who have been as rusty as Joe. And it takes that much flying to get back up to being able to pass a private pilot check ride. Remember, we know as a fact that our skills deteriorate rapidly. We all know that if we got our private certificate 10 years ago and we haven't been doing much flying, we haven't had much discipline in keeping up with things, with renewing our knowledge, because that fades, then, you know, to really get back up truly to the private pilot level where you can pass that check ride, it's going to take some flying. It's going to take some work. So Joe and his mentor pilot have estimated that it's going to take 22 flight training sessions for Joe to reach all of his goals. And remember, one of them is to check out on that new airplane, and another goal is to be able to fly safely on those 500-mile trips day and night, and I'll show you how that drives a little bit more of the training requirement here in a second. So those are the requirements to reach the goals, the training requirements. Let's take a little closer look at some of these tools we're going to use. You can use the original private pilot ground school that you used years ago. Most of the stuff doesn't change, but what does change are the FARs. I use eCFR online for my FAR updates, because they update them online as soon as they officially make the change. You don't have to wait for the print cycle. Same thing with the Airman's Aeronautical Information Manual. If you go to the online version, the updates when they publish them are published immediately online. Now, the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge is the book that I found most people overlook. They might have purchased it when they went through their private pilot training, but they didn't read it or they scanned it. But there is just a wealth of good information and knowledge in this book. So you can download it for free as a PDF, or you can buy it. It's not very expensive as a hard copy. But I highly recommend that a guy like Joe that's getting back into things, sharpen himself back up, this book is excellent for bringing the knowledge in those 5 pillars of knowledge up to a higher level. And here's another book that most people today don't even know about, but it's still in print. You can get it at Sporties, and Amazon has it. It's called Stick and Rudder. I remember reading Stick and Rudder back when I was a teenager, probably even preteen when I was getting into flying, because back then all we had was books. We didn't even have film strips, or we didn't even have slides. We had books. That was about it. And I read Stick and Rudder early on because one of my early instructors recommended it to me. Excellent book. It looks at flying in a less technical way than something like the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge would. I would call it almost folksy. But Wolfgang Langowitsch here, who wrote the book, and of course it has been updated over the years, has a real good way to explain the basics of stick and rudder flying, and that's why I named the book Stick and Rudder. You can see some of the things that are included as topics in the books, and here you can see under Part 3 the controls, the flippers and throttles. So, you know, it's kind of, it uses some old terms obviously, but it really is another way to look at the information that you need to know. And you will recall that I have been advocating and saying all along, you can't expect to lock something in to the memory banks just looking at it once. It takes at least 5 times, and the more different ways you can look at that particular topic, the better in terms of learning. So he's going to read Stick and Rudder. He's also decided he's going to read Redefining Airmanship cover to cover, so he has an excellent handle on this airmanship thing. And then he's going to go online, as we mentioned, and there are 2 excellent sources online. AOPA Online, under Training and Safety tab, you can get into the Air Safety Institute, and then it's got all of these mini courses. I've taken many of them, but I can't keep up with them. They keep adding them all the time. They're excellent mini courses, and as you'll see, Joe and his mentor pilot picked 3 of them for Joe to go through in this particular airmanship development plan. And then, of course, the course catalog at FAAsafety.gov on the Wings program. Again, just many, many, many excellent mini courses in the course catalog there. And Joe and his mentor pilot selected 3 of those. We'll look at them. Now, the flight training sessions themselves, let's talk about them, because we've all experienced a lot of different flight training sessions with different instructors. Seems like every instructor has his or her own way of doing it. I use the airline military FITS program recommended approach, FAA Industry Technical Training Standards approach to a training session, with a little modification that I've found over the years works better. Here's what I recommend all of your flight training sessions should be based on, and of course some of them will be modified somewhat depending on the mission. Number 1, always have at least a 1-hour ground briefing. Don't cut on this part of the training. A lot of instructors, because they aren't logging flight time in ground training, cut this part short. But you need a full hour. And the way I have discovered over the years as the best way to do this is at the prior training session, I'll assign to the student the topics for the next lesson that I would or that an instructor would normally brief the student on for his review. But I add in a little extra. I tell the student he's going to have to brief me on those topics rather than me briefing him. As we all know, if you are going to teach something, you learn it better. In this way, it also gets rid of the problem of the student falling asleep halfway through the instructor's briefing. In other words, if the student is doing the briefing, then he or she is going to be engaged more. Then the instructor's role is to critique that briefing that the student gives. And remember, critique is not criticism. Critique is looking at what happened and then looking at what could be done better, where the weaknesses are, and taking care of them. So it's a much better way of doing this pre-flight briefing, I have found, and I use it all the time now. Included in this flight training session, a standard session, my recommendation is 1.5 hours of flight time, not 1 hour. With 1 hour of flight time, by the time you get everything, you taxi out, and you get your run-up done, you get all the prep done, and then the taxi time back after you land, you get less than an hour in the air in the actual flight training. Now, yes, you are learning things while you're doing the run-up and the taxi and all of that. However, I have found through a lot of experience that an 1.5-hour flight makes it much more comfortable and much more effective learning for the student than a 1-hour flight. So I'd recommend you use a 1.5-hour flight per flight training session, and then a minimum of a 1/2-hour debriefing on the ground. The debriefing, again, should be the critique of the flight. That's where the student and the instructor talk about what could have been done better, what went well, what didn't go so well, how that could be improved. So that usually takes a good 1/2 hour, then with a quick assignment of what's going to happen on the next lesson. So that's what I call the standard flight training session right there. All right, step 4, define and locate resources. So we've decided that Joe's going to take the private pilot ground school, but he wants to use an updated program, not his old program. So he's decided to use the Jepson Online program. Of course, you can buy any number of CD, DVD programs from Sporties or Kings or Gleam or a whole bunch of others out there you can get. And then he's going to download the FAA Pilots of Aeronautical Knowledge. Instead of buying the hard copy, he's going to download it, read it on his computer. He's going to buy Stick and Rudder from Sporties. He's going to buy Redefining Airmanship from Amazon. And then he's going to go to AOPA and FASafety.gov for his mini courses online. Now here are the mini courses that Joe and his instructor decided to put into his personal airmanship development plan. He's going to use the ASI Flight Risk Evaluator. He's going to go through that mini course to learn how to use that risk evaluator, because that is a tool that is going to be used in the Airmanship Development Support Organization as part of the safety management system. So he'll be using that on every flight as he flies within the EDSO. So he's going to learn how to use it by taking that mini course at AOPA Online. Also AOPA Online, he's going to go through the mini course, Know Before You Go, Navigating Today's Airspace. So he's gotten a little rusty on airspace rules, and those have changed a little bit over the last few years, so he's going to review those. And he's also going to take the mini course Runway Safety, because as we all know, runway incursions have been a big problem the last few years. And then on the FASafety.gov, he's going to take the mini course A Direct Approach to GPS Fundamentals for VFR Pilots. Joe has used a Garmin 430 a couple of times, but he's not really proficient in it. And now that he's going to go to GLASS, which is based on using the GPS, he's going to start getting up to speed. So he's going to take that mini course, and he's also going to take the FAA mini course Aeronautical Decision Making for VFR Pilots, and he's going to take the mini course Do the Right Thing, Decision Making for Pilots. So you can see how that fits in. And then he's going to a resource that he's got to locate. He's decided he's going to fly the Cirrus SR-20 to go through this airmanship development plan that he's laying out here. So the EDSO that he is selected is a club. So he's going to join the club to have access to that SR-20, and also the mentor pilot is in the club. So the mentor pilot will provide the flight instruction for him that's required in this plan. So he's going to join that EDSO. So now we've defined and we've located all of our training resources. Step 5, state specific objectives. We stated our goals earlier. Now we're going to state our specific objectives to reach those goals. He's going to complete his review of the private pilot ground school. He's going to complete reading the FAA's Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. He's going to complete reading Stick and Rudder and Redefining Airmanship. He's going to complete the online mini courses. He's going to complete flight training sessions with a mentor pilot, including a VMC into IMC survival course. So that's part of those 22 lessons. A VMC into IMC survival course is something that I always offer in flight schools that I run. I advocate it to pilots who are not instrument rated, and basically the course it is about 5 hours of flight and we'll say 6 hours of flight, I'm sorry, and about 10 hours of ground training. However, what it does is it teaches the VFR pilot enough instrument flying skills and procedures to survive an encounter flying VMC into IMC. I don't know why this isn't required of all private pilots. I don't know why more rental operations and flight schools don't offer a course like this. When I advocate this among folks who run flight schools and rental operations, the answer I usually get is, oh, we don't want to teach them that because then they'll go out there and fly IFR without a clearance. Well, maybe. I mean, I guess there are a few people out there that are crazy enough to do that. There have been. I know of people who have done it over the years. But, you know, that's a small price to pay from the rest of us to have people who are capable of surviving that kind of encounter. And as you know, this is a big area of accidents, and most of them are fatal. Most encounters flying VMC and IMC of non-instrument rated pilots result in fatal accidents. So this is a big one. And Joe's mentor pilot pointed this out to him. If he wants to go out there and fly, especially at night, fly 500 miles away from home base, and as a VFR pilot, this is essential. So they put this into as a specific objective. And his last specific objective is going to be to pass the private pilot check ride. But of course, since he already has a certificate, he doesn't have to go with a DPE. He's going to go up with a mentor pilot, and not his mentor pilot. This will be another mentor pilot that has a little bit better point of view to evaluate him. All right, now we're up to step 6 already of the 7 steps. The step 6 is to plan instruction and training. So number 1 is to review the private pilot ground school. And the plan is, Joe thinks that, and his mentor pilot believe that's going to take about 20 hours. Joe's going to do them in 1-hour sessions, so that's 21-hour sessions. Then he's going to read the books, all of them together. He figures to be about 30 hours of reading. He's going to do that in 1-hour sessions, so 30 1-hour sessions for that. He's going to complete the online mini courses. They're about an hour each, so that's 6 1-hour sessions. He's going to complete the flight training sessions with the mentor pilot, and there's 15 of those, and then an additional 7 for the VMC into IMC survival course. And he's going to complete a private pilot check ride with the mentor pilot. And he's going to schedule that, and that's going to be a 4-hour check ride. They're going to schedule it for 4 hours total, ground and flight. So now he has planned his instruction and training. Remember, we talked about the tools that you would use. So in this step, you're going to start using your planning calendar. And here's just an example how this could get laid out. Here, this is laid out over a 3-month period. It could be laid out over a year period. Of course, the longer you stretch it out, the less effective it is, the longer it's going to take to reach the goals. But I just, for example purposes here, said, well, Joe is really motivated. He's going to devote the resources required, and he's going to do this in 90 days. So if he were to do that on that pace, he could do it like this. He could do a 1-hour private pilot ground school online session on Monday night. On Tuesday night, he could complete a mini course online. Then on Wednesday night, spend an hour reading the book. Thursday night, go back and do another ground school session. On Thursday night, he's going to spend another hour reading the book. And then on Saturday, he's going to go out for a flight training session with the mentor pilot. And then the second week, same kind of pattern. And then up here in the 5th week, he starts flying twice a week. So, and then in month 2, he's got it planned out. You can see spread. So he's doing something every day, but only about an hour a day other than the flight training sessions. So, it could be that instead of just doing a private pilot ground school here on the 10th, he might decide he's going to read 2 hours of reading out of books. So we can move both of these over there. So it's very flexible. And here's his final month. And you can see that he doesn't need every day in the month, just doing one thing at a time. And he's got his check ride scheduled on the last day of that month, of the 3rd month. So again, that's going to vary depending on you. But this is Joe's plan that he put together with his mentor pilot. So the next step, now that you've got the training all planned out, is to actually conduct the training. And he's going to use his logbook to record the flights, use his journal to write down any questions he has about the flight or any topics that came to mind during the flight or maybe after the flight. And then here's another way that another tool that could be used to review the training. And you've heard me talk about this before. There's the Apereo Vision 1000 system is probably the best system around. A little pricey. It's about $7,500 per unit to install in the airplane, and then you have to have a whole flight operations quality assurance program supported by a computer system that provides analytical capabilities and so forth. And to set that up, that's about $15,000, and then there's a monthly fee. So this is probably not practical. The Apereo system, I don't believe, is practical for an individual. I mean, I guess somebody could spend that kind of money if they wanted to, but it's really not practical for an individual. It is for an ADSO, an Airmanship Development Support Organization, because then the cost of that device and the Flight Ops Quality Assurance Program behind it is spread over many people. But there are other systems. This is one here that I've got the picture up of. Is called the Fly-V system, and it provides split screen video recording. Here you can see the instrument panel. This is actually the view out the window, just a sky right now. It's got some graphics that follow along, geo-referenced with where the airplane is, and it also uses Google Earth to show the flight track over the actual satellite picture of the ground. And it records audio. Now this does not have the Flight Operations Quality Assurance Program analytical tools in it, so it's not as good as the Vision 1000 system, but it's adequate. And Joe and his mentor pod have determined that this will work for what they're doing. And it's about a $2,000 system, and I think it's like $250 a year service fee for, you have to go online you have to upload it and then view it online after the flight. So they're going to use that. So that's another tool, very effective tool for making that training much more productive. So that was the 7th step, conduct training. The next step then is to start back around the circle, assess the current airmanship level. And if Joe had reached the airmanship goals that he was after, then that plan is complete. He reached the goals. If he did not reach the goals, then he and his mentor pilot would develop another plan using all 7 steps again to again get to those goals. If he has reached the goals, then they're just going to do the same thing, a 7-step process with new airmanship goals. So that's how it works, pretty straightforward. Now all of these results after that plan has been completed will be thrown against the 10 principles and standards of airmanship. So let's review those quickly, but I'm not going to get into the details of them. I've decided to do another webinar series starting after the first of the year that will take a much more in-depth look at the particular aspects of redefining airmanship. And so this is one area, looking at the 10 principles and standards of airmanship, that could take at least an hour to look at. So we're just going to review what they are here, because we looked at them only once so far. So the 10 principles and standards of airmanship. Principle 1, airmanship must be viewed as a whole. The standard is multidisciplinary, competence. You have to be good across the board, not just in one thing. Principle 2, airmanship demands consistency, and the standard there is predictability. Principle 3, airmanship requires balance. The standard, no weak areas. No weak areas in any of the elements of the Kern airmanship model. Principle 4, specialization is achieved only after balance is achieved. The standard, broad-based competence. So if you want to be the world's best tail dragger crosswind pilot, that's okay. Go do it, but not before you have achieved balance, broad-based competence in your airmanship. Principle 5, airmanship is uncompromising flight discipline. The standard there is 0 violations, 0 tolerance. That's the attitude you have to have. Now, are we going to make mistakes and errors? Sure. But you have to, your goal, your standard has to be 0 tolerance, 0 violations. Principle 6, there is no substitute for flying skill. The standard there, your stick and rudder proficiency must be at a high level of airmanship in all areas of flight, and you must have procedural perfection. You must know your SOPs, your abnormal procedures, and your emergency procedures. Principle 7, airmanship requires multiple knowledge bases. The standard there, instant recall of critical items. So that means all your memory items. You have to have instant recall and perfect recall of those items. It can't be almost perfect. You can't know the engine fire procedure, all the steps except one. You got to know them all. And you have to have sufficient knowledge of self, aircraft, team, environment, and risk to maximize your performance. Principle 8, airmanship is maximizing situational awareness. The standards for that, you have to understand the components of preparation for maintaining situational awareness. Remember we went over those a couple sessions ago, and again there are ways to learn that. It's not a mystery. Standard number 2, recognize lost situational awareness in yourself and others, And 3, no immediate action steps for recovering from lost SA. And of course you'll recall that first immediate action step for recovering lost SA. All right, get away from the dirt. Principle 9, solid airmanship leads to good judgment. Consistently sound decision making is the standard. And Principle 10, good airmanship is contagious. You have to share what you've learned. We have to bring new pilots into the game. We have to encourage all the pilots that we're out there sharing airspace with to be the best airmen they can be. So that's part of it. If we're not doing that, we're not really practicing good airmanship. So the standard is you've got to share all this. All right, where do we go from here then? Well, as I've been saying all along, the next steps are always yours. No way I can say, okay, you've got to do this. There are no FAA regulations yet telling you have to do this. So this is up to you. Next step are yours. Complete the Redefining Airmanship webinar series. If you haven't attended each one of the 6 webinars, I would encourage you to do so. And they're all available now at airmanshipexcellence.org. That's the website for the Center for Airmanship Excellence, airmanshipexcellence.org. They're all available there. You can request a download of each individual webinar. So I, again, encourage you to complete the series. Then read the book, cover to cover. Then I would also encourage you to get in the airmanship loop. You know, you may not do anything about this after this webinar today. But if you do intend to pursue airmanship excellence, then you've got to get in the loop, because there are a lot of resources that are available to you. And one way, I think probably at this point, the best way for you to get in the loop is to register for airmanship updates at airmanshipexcellence.org. You'll be notified of things that are going on, of resources that are available to you. And in fact, there is an event coming up I'm going to tell you about in a minute that if you were registered for airmanship updates at airmanshipexcellence.org, you have already received an announcement of this event. Of course, the biggest one, the most important one, the only one that really counts here, is you have to commit to a continuous airmanship development. If you don't do that, then you're not going to do any of the rest of it. That's the number one thing. And I would like to encourage you to attend the Airmanship Excellence event that we're going to hold on December 6th. The Center for Airmanship Excellence is holding its 3rd event on December 6th. And the title of the event is Airmanship Development Support Organization Demonstrator Briefing. We've been talking about this Airmanship Development Support Organization. We've decided that the next step in proving to the industry that this is the best way for all of us to go, for all the reasons we've been talking about, for our own personal safety, for our own personal satisfaction, more challenges, get more out of flying individually, but also to turn the industry around, because we looked at those alarming negative trends in number of pilots, new pilots coming in, flight hours flown, safety record, all of that stuff. The industry needs to see what we've been talking about demonstrated in an actual flight operation. So we intend to stand up an Airmanship Development Support Organization demonstrator, probably early next spring. Timing is not quite clear yet, but we're going to hold this briefing on the 6th. And it's from 1900 to 2100 at Schaumburg Airport, good old 06 Charlie. It's going to be, you all know where the terminal building is there with Pilot Pete's upstairs. Well, this is going to be downstairs. There's a meeting room off the hallway leading to the Northwest Flyers FBO lobby. There'll be signage, real easy to find, downstairs. And that's where we're going to hold the briefing. And we're going to lay out what this demonstrator is going to do, what it's going to look like, how much it's going to cost, what you can get out of it, and all that sort of thing at this briefing. The seating is limited, so I'd ask you to register for it by sending me an email telling me you want to attend. And if you register and can't attend, please let me know, because there will be a waiting list, I'm sure. All right. Now at this point, I'd just like to ask you to hang around a few more minutes, because I've got some survey questions, and these are the last ones of the series. So I'd like to get your input. As you know, that helps us tremendously in designing the program as we go forward. But before we get to those questions I have for you, do you have any for me? Any questions or comments? And you know the drill. You can raise your hand by pressing on the raise your hand icon, or you can send me a text question by typing it in the box and then sending it to me. So I'll give you a couple seconds here to see if you have any questions or comments. Okay, it looks like there are no questions or comments. I would encourage you that if you do have some that you didn't want to share with us here, to send it to me in an email or give me a call. I'll give you my contact information in just a minute. So, I have some questions for you. The first one is, stand by just one here. All right, I got a little technical difficulty. What happened is I somehow got logged out of the questions, so I am going to log back in. This will just take me about 5 seconds. If you'll just hang on, I'd appreciate it. All right, there we go. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulty. These webinars are wonderful tools, but they can get a little dicey to operate. All right, are you ready to commit to a continuous airmanship development plan? Yes or no? So most of you voted. I'll give you a couple more seconds. Give everybody a chance to vote. Okay, it looks like everybody's voted. And there are the results. 83% of you say you're ready, and 17% no. Well, I'm really glad to see that most of you, vast majority, are ready to go, ready to commit to a continuous airmanship development plan. Those of you who are not ready to commit, I hope that you will do some more research, get yourself smarter on the subject, and then hope that you do make the decision to commit. If not, if you have any questions about that, just let me know, and I'd be glad to help you to make that decision. All right, here's the second one. Are you going to, or have you already completed all 6 Redefining Airmanship sessions? So if you have not completed them yet, but you intend to, you would answer yes here also. All right, looks like all of you have voted. And great, all of you have completed them. That's good. Glad to hear. And again, I'm always looking for feedback on these, so if you have suggestions, comments on any one of these seminars or all of them together, let me know. Appreciate it. All right, are you going to, or have you already read Redefining Airmanship? So if you haven't read it yet, but you intend to, vote yes, please. All right, looks like all of you have voted. And 83% yes, and we saw that 17%. It's funny how those match up, isn't it? Say no. Are you going to, or have you already signed up for the Center for Airmanship Excellent Airmanship Updates? Okay, you've all voted. And all of you have. Well, great. I'm glad to see that you want to stay in the loop. Are you going to, or have you already subscribe to Captain Dave's Hangar. That's the blog associated with the Center for Airmanship Excellence that I try to keep active, but there'll be much more coming out on that. Okay, almost everyone's voted. There we go. And all of you have. Great. Are you going to attend the Airmanship Excellence event on the 6th? So yes, if you've already made up your mind. No, if you've made up your mind you're not going to. Or not sure yet if you've got to look at your schedule, or you just have to think about it some more. Okay. All right, everybody's voted. Share those with you. Great, 17% yes, 67% no, and 17% not sure yet. And we only have 2 more here. Are you going to seek out the support of an airmanship development support organization to help you with your airmanship development plan? Or are you planning on doing this all by yourself, or maybe with your flight instructor you've been flying with over the years? Or do you think you want to get in an organization that we've been talking about, or one like the one we've been talking about? So still have a few more to vote here. Okay, everybody's voted. So, and I'll share that with you. Look at that, evenly matched. A third say yes, a third say no, and a third are not sure yet. Interesting result. And the final question, the one that I've been alluding to all along, and let me make it as a statement. If I don't fly right, I'm not going to fly at all. So do you strongly agree with that statement? Only agree, disagree, or strongly disagree with that statement? If I don't fly right, I'm not going to fly at all. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're not up to the airmanship level you think you should be, that you're not going to fly. It just means you're not going to go out and fly in situations that can't be supported by the level of airmanship you have right now. This just means that if I'm not up to the flight, I'm not going to do it. So, everybody's voted. And here are the results. Strongly agree, 83%. Great. 17% agree, and nobody disagrees or strongly disagrees. Well, that's great. I feel real good about that. I feel like you've really gotten the message that underlies this whole series of webinars. Well, that completes the session, completes the series. I'm glad that you've all hung in here for the whole 6 sessions. I've enjoyed working with you on them. And if you would like to get in touch with me, you can get me at 815-349-8530 or dkoch@airmanshipexcellence.org. And I'm looking forward to seeing you at an Airmanship Excellence event, or at some other flying activity that is focused on airmanship development. Thank you very much again for your attention and for attending the webinars.